Hi, I'm Roland. I'm a developer, and I think we should use the language server protocol LSP for configurators. To make this case, first I will tell you a few things about LSP. Then I'll show you how its components are set up in a classical setup. Also, I'll show you a setup for web editors, and then tell you why I think this is a good idea. Um, okay, let's start with LSP, the language server protocol. It's created by Microsoft for their VS Code IDE, most of all. But it solves a broader problem. It's not just for this specific IDE. Basically, each single editor or IDE needs to implement behavior for each language. For instance, auto-completion, syntax checks, things like that. They are hard to build, and when each IDE has to implement functionality for each language, it's more and more to build. And because languages just keep appearing, and also there are more and more IDEs and editors, we have this combinatoric explosion. There's more and more of both, and it's just too much to maintain. So Microsoft decided to solve this at basically in between the two, to create a protocol that you just have to implement once per language, and it can be used by several editors. So this is the website of language server protocol with the whole specification. And yeah, let's see at the classical setup what components are in play when using LSP. All of this runs on the local machine usually. We have, for example, VS Code that runs as an editor, and we are editing certain languages, and each time we open a TypeScript file, for instance, VS Code starts a server, a language server in the background. They communicate, the IDE communicates with it via via gRPC. And yeah, basically each file or each client opens up a new server, and when you close the file, the server shuts down. So this is handled in the background. You don't really notice it. And yeah, the developer gains from this auto-completion, code inspections, basically the tools that have been in IDEs or editors for quite some time, general purpose coding support, one can say. And this, once the language server, for instance, a new language appears, they often publish their language server implementations, so the IDEs already support it, and not just one or two selective IDEs, but most of them, because they speak language server protocol by now. So that's what I can say about the current state in development. Language server protocol has taken an important role for local development, but it can be used for another use case as well. And that's where there's not so much happening yet. Let's see. Browser apps, you can totally edit code in a browser nowadays. There's Monaco, which is VS Code for the browser. There are other projects, and yeah, web IDEs are really powerful by now. And you can also run language servers in an API. And some people, for instance, the guys at Typefox, they built a bridge for converting the gRPC communication to WebSocket communication. So you could run remote language servers in your app. And this setup would allow us to use a language server for power users that configure an app. They also would have auto completion, inspection, and use code instead of a configurator. If we have the backend API, which also calls the language server, we could also use the language server for input validation. Yeah, why would you do that? Let's look at TypoScript, for instance. That's a configuration language at its core for the CMS Typo 3. And it looks like this. Lots of arcane documentation, some arcane syntax and UI elements for configuring all this. And I mean, it doesn't look too nice, but we have built systems like this. I have built a similar configurators for corporate software. If you have a highly customizable system, this is just what might emerge. And developers and customers usually hate stuff like this because building good tools is expensive. So you often end up with mediocre tools. But why not take advantage of good web editors such as Monaco? You would just have to build a language server for your configuration language, and you can autocomplete anything. Plus, you can enable local development using the same language server. So by switching from configurator to language that anyone can work with as they do when developing, you can really improve the developer experience or the configurator experience. And I think this has great potential. So I'm showcasing such a setup for a simple expression calculator built with Axum framework at Rust Basel on March 9th. You can find a link in the description, and more will be, another link for the GitHub repo will follow soon. So yeah, stay tuned. See you around. Bye bye.